Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending these assets? Have you penetration tested these public assets? Start 2017 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night. Welcome back, everyone, to Startup Security Weekly. I want to lead in, Michael, with talking a little bit about training from our fine friends at IT Pro TV. Of course, training is integral to any organization. What I love about IT Pro TV is that you can find the right training for almost anyone in the organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be technical security training, although they have that too. So as we, at Security Weekly, Michael, just to even talk about our journey here on Security Weekly, we've taken on a lot of new employees. Some of those employees have roles in technical roles, like Python. They're learning programming languages. Some of them want to learn security. So, there's Metasploit training and Kali Linux training available to them. There's project management training, which we need, because I suck really hard at project. I should probably do that course. It is just, I understand the concepts. I've been exposed to the processes, methodologies of project management, and boy, do I suck at it. I just don't like doing it. I've done it before. I just don't like doing it, which is probably why I haven't done the training, because I don't like doing it. But there's some training in there for everyone. You can save 30% off your monthly membership. Get the first 7 days free using the code SS30. Go to itpro.tv/startup security. And you can do their supervisor portal, where you can actually assign training modules to your employees, keep track of how they're doing, and buy it as a bundle so that anyone in your organization that needs some level of training, IT Pro TV is the place to go, and you can manage that in one awesome subscription. There's a lot of choices out there for training. Some are free. Some you have to send your employees places. That's why itpro.tv is it's all right there. Very dynamic. There's a transcript for every training class, which I think is really cool.
That.
Yeah, they do a full
cool
transcript, so you can search it. You can search for the parts you're looking for. There's interactive video modules for each one, as well as a transcript. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, I'll tell you what, and I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet, but I had a great conversation with both Tim and Don last week. They've got some red team, blue team stuff coming out. And when you go look at the way that they're thinking about this and the way that they're doing it, the way that they've chunked it up, the way that people can watch kind of live. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting is the amount of programming that they're able to put out. I kind of said, well, how do people consume it? They said, what's interesting? A lot of people just kind of keep it on the background. Like instead of listening to a radio all day, it's on, and then they hear something that, whoa, hold on, let me go back and watch that again, or let me dig a little deeper. To your point, let me go pull down the transcript. And I put up a piece today on CSO talking about the importance for security leaders to embrace red teaming and to embrace the concept of it. You've got to understand what the reality of attackers is like if you want to be a better defender. And you've got that ability at IT Pro TV. So it's good stuff. So it's exciting.
We've got a conference coming up here in Providence, Rhode Island. It's called Providence HackCon. Now, this is not the full Security Weekly security conference that we're putting on. I'm hoping that it grows to that point to give our listeners, especially on Startup Security Weekly, some insights. But the purpose of this conference that we're putting on with Doug White, myself, Russell from Secure Digital Life, Sam is helping us organize it. It's for the Cyber Patriot students here in Rhode Island. However, if you're in the area, if you're in Rhode Island or the New England area, you want to come down for the conference, myself, Doug, Ben Jackson, who's been on the show, Ron and Cindy Gula are coming down to present
cool.
at this event, which I thought was really cool. I'm just so flattered to have them here for this conference to influence the youth. But if you have friends, family that want to get into cybersecurity, this is the place to come attend. It's completely free. You can come. If you're in cybersecurity in Rhode Island, you should absolutely do that. But you can go to securityweekly.com/ProvHackCon. You can register. Again, it's completely free. And we're going to give presentations that talk about how to get you started in information security, what types of certifications you should get, what types of training you should do, how you should plan your career. Ron and Cindy have been in security for a really long time together, and for a really long, not to date, put an age on.
I was going to say,
they've been
I'm
around
saying
for a
you're
long.
old.
They've been around for a long time in the security space. And they run an angel investing firm. So they'll be talking about, hey, if you've got an idea, if you want to do a startup, you get to get advice from Ron and Cindy Kulu, who are investing in over a dozen now startups in security as a team, which I think is great. I worked for Ron at Tenable. It was a wonderful time at Tenable. It was 7 years I spent there, and Ron was actually the one who hired me in the hiring process. So it's really awesome to have them both here, and I worked with Cindy at Tenable as well. So it's great to have them here and influence the youth. And like I said, we're kind of opening up to beyond Cyber Patriot students here in Rhode Island. We're opening up to anyone who wants to advance their career, especially if you have younger folks that want to get into the field. So it's going to be at the Providence Public Library, Michael. It's going to be really cool.
That's awesome.
I hope you can make it. Are you going to come down for the event?
It's on my calendar. I'm looking at it. Here's the funny thing. I'm going to be in Boston 2 weeks later. That's one of those things I'm going to tell you about later. But I've got, when we do our updates, I've got a new workshop. I'm going to be doing the workshop for a private client in Boston the first full week of November. So that actually I'm going to look for somebody else. So if you're in Boston and you think you want to work with me, we should talk, because then, Paul, I'm going to try to stick around for that week and get some time with you in the studio.
Yes, we can do
that
both
may
live
make
from the
it
studio.
Tough. We're going to do it. It's gonna happen. The world might end the next day, but we're going to try it. So me getting away on a weekend 2 weeks before I'm going to go away might be a little tricky, but I'm not ruling it out. It's and if not this time, this is definitely something that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and my plan too is to run more events, especially for Cyber Patriot students, and maybe overlap some of that with the community as well. So this is something that. I know some of my other friends as well, Michael, this is an issue they feel very strongly about in educating the youth about cybersecurity. So, there's going to be more. We've
got a lot going on in South Carolina about that. Most of it good. Some of it really phenomenal. And so, yes, I will do whatever I can to support it. And
really quick,
I'll be there. If not,
make sure you check out the interview we did with Ed Scotus last night on Paul's Security Weekly. We talked about the SANS Pentest Hackfest quite a bit, so I won't go into a lot of details here. Go back and watch or listen to that segment. You do get a discount if you're a Security Weekly listener. You can go to sans.org/Hackfest17. You can save $300 off by using the code Hackfest17 at registration for the 2-day Hackfest Summit. And Ed, who puts on the conference, will describe that last night, so go check that out. And we're doing a webcast for Cyber Reason, securityweekly.com/Cyber Reason. We're going to be talking about the techniques used to turn threat data into usable information. Joff and I are going to have a lot of fun with that one. Oh, my God. And B-Sides Connecticut, bsidect.org. It is sold out, but they're looking for sponsorships. So make sure that you go do that. Sorry, the announcements are really long because I forgot to read them in the first segment. But now we're on to Startup Security Weekly, the articles on leadership, innovation, and startup success. I love that description, Michael. That's so much better.
Well, it's like I started
I love that.
One of these days I'll break down the way that I do this for people, but I have a template that I follow, and as I go through the week, as I read stories, as I have conversations with people, Owler and other sources give us alerts, and so I kind of fit everything in. So that's why sometimes these shows for me, this part of it is done in advance, and as you and I have been talking a lot about the role that this program plays in the Security Weekly family, as well as how it connects with everything else, I've really looked at the fact, and actually we've gotten some great feedback. And I love it. If you're watching us, please know the feedback's great. And it doesn't always have to be, oh, I love you guys, you're awesome, smoochy. It could be, you guys totally got this wrong. In fact, I had a great conversation this week. I can't tell you who it was, but you remember Paul a couple weeks ago, it was a couple months ago. He's a couple episodes behind. You and I were talking about CrowdStrike and Unicorn, and I said, look, I don't get it. I don't get their category. What did they do? He called me up. He's like, hey, he goes, I just watched the episode. I love them. They're great. We use them. I said, cool. What category are they in? Are they EDR or what? He said, Yeah, but they shouldn't be. So cool. Well, what are
Interesting.
you using them for? He said, visibility. They give us visibility. He said, I have visibility in the stuff in my network like I've never had before. I went to their website again. I said, I see no mention of the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah. He said, I'm not saying I'm not telling you they're selling it the right way. What I'm telling you is it's meeting my needs and I'm really enjoying it. So cool. Now he said, look, my company, I can't tell you who I am, and we don't endorse products and we don't endorse vendors. So all I can tell you is anecdotally, I do listen, and I know you guys said you were confused about it, but I like it. I'm happy with it. He actually said too, he's happy with the company. He's happy with the service. He's got like he's got no complaints about it at all. So when we say stuff like, hey, we want feedback or write in or call in or talk to us. Yeah. I'm dead serious about that because this is very much, through these interviews, Paul, it's very clear to me a couple things. One, there's an industry and there's a community. I love the fact that we sit at that intersection. And then whether you're, think about Barrett we just talked to. He's been through this process a number of times. He's in R&D. He's both advancing the community and the industry. So I renamed this section. I didn't tell anybody. I just kind of did it.
I love it.
But, what I looked at is, we do these article discussions, and what am I putting up? I'm putting up stuff on leadership. I'm putting up stuff on innovation. I'm putting stuff up on startup success. So naturally, we're focusing on that. But as we've seen consistently, and as a number of you have also reached out and thanked me, I will tell you, I started something maybe even in the last year called a Smile File. And when I get nice emails from people on LinkedIn or nice emails like, hey, thanks, I stick them there. And I'll tell you what, it sounded cheesy. It was recommended to me because I've been struggling with some depression over the last couple of years. I'm out of it now, so I can say that. And it's kind of scary to look at it. And I had somebody recommend that to me. And I'll tell you what, these days where you wonder. So I'm telling you this too, if you're in security. I'm telling you this if you're a startup. I'm telling you this if you struggle through some of these issues. When you have this Smile File, somebody sends you a nice note and you find you're having a bad day, go read them. Go read those notes, and you'll be surprised by a couple things. How many you can get, or how many you can collect. Because if you'd asked me, I'd be like, I don't know, I have like 4 or 5 in there. No, I had more than 4 or 5. And second, I read everything and I respond to everything. And I know, Paul, you often do the same as well. Because
I read everything.
Get the same
the responding part is I get better at.
All right. Well, I do my best to respond to everything. And so, like when you send in and you tell us that we've inspired your startup journey, or that we've given you hope, or that we've helped you discover a new company, that's awesome. Here's the stuff I'd love to know. Are there things that we're not answering that you'd love to know about? And are there other technologies that you think we should cover? Are there problems that you're trying to solve right now and you'd really love a different perspective on it? Those are things that are equally in game, and we'll tack it down. We'll do it. So this week, articles, discussion. The first one, I like this idea: how to fund your business, even if you're broke and you've got zero experience. I'm not a fan of the zero experience, but let me just go ahead and hit you on the punchline with this. It's this concept of pre-selling. You can do it when you're a product. You can do it when you're a service. You can do it if you're doing training, and that's its point. So a lot of people say, well, I don't have VC funding. I don't have connections. I don't have the pedigree. I don't have the money to sustain. What am I going to do? And their answer here is, well, pre-sell it. Go put something together. Give people a timeline. Tell them where you're going to go with it. Now, I'll tell you, there's a couple other people that talk about pre-selling. I thought this was a pretty good way to do it. And what they've offered is that you give people a vision. Now, let me temper this a little bit. It's not so simple as to say, hey, I got this great idea. I'm going to go build this thing, and it sounds like you should be on Phineas and Ferb. And by the way, I just need like $1 million, and I can totally make it work. Like, no. What we're saying is that you've reasonably thought out the problem, right? The question we ask all the time. You've thought about those consequences, and that you've got a solution for it, and that you should be able to build that solution fairly easily. So we're not saying that you need it to be crowdfunded or you need thousands of people to spend money on it. It's just that you need enough to get everything going, to keep it moving. And so what happens then is that that's still a risk. You're asking people to take a risk. I can't show you a working version of the product. I maybe don't have the testimonials that you'd like. All these things we traditionally do that de-risk it aren't there. So I give you free service for longer terms. We've seen some people do launches where, in fact, I've done this. I've participated in some online launches where they're like, okay, first 100 in, you get in for life. Right, so it's not a recurring fee. They lock in at the low price for life. I'll give you free implementation or free consulting or free training. So the point is, you bundle something together that's useful for somebody, They prepay you. You're able to go build it, and you go forward. And to be fair, I do this with some of my workshops. I'm at a point where I've been doing this long enough that thankfully I've got some credibility in the testimonials, and I'm not typically doing something that's new per se, in that I'm putting it together in a better way, right? It's more effective. Well, it's still new. So if you're like, well, hold on, you haven't done this workshop yet, Michael? No. So let's work a deal.
But
I throw in some extras.
So Michael, and this is just something I've been thinking about lately. How do you cross the chasm if you don't have funding? And
well, it depends on what you're doing.
We've talked a little bit. You've mentioned the Crossing the Chasm. That's a book that you've talked about. Yeah, that you've talked about before. But how do you do that without funding or little funding?
I mean, part of it is you got to hustle, right? And then it depends on what you're trying to solve. So one of the challenges we've seen, one of the places where I think it absolutely makes sense to take funding is you've got an idea, but you're seriously going to need some dollars behind it. So when I say serious dollars, $1 million, $2 million, like you're really going to need that to go. When I see this, you've got a product and you've got some sort of reputation or a basis, or you've done the work. You can explain the problem better. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to Play Bigger for a second, because this all fits into it. You don't have funding.
So
you don't have a lot of budget.
When should you read Crossing the Chasm versus Play Bigger versus the Brain Audit? Is there an order?
Yeah, in my world, I would start with Play Bigger.
Okay.
But then once you read it, I'm going to say set it aside for a second. Matt Alderman said something on our program where we broke that down that I thought was really important. You want to define the category based on what you can do today and what you think you can reasonably do for the next year or two. And then start thinking about 2 years, 3 years out what your next category may or may not be. Mm-hmm. Now, is it possible that you can be like a bird's eye and you can be the category king of frozen vegetables for 100 years? Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. But look at all the people taking aim at Uber right now and some of their missteps and their stumbles, and go take a look at a bunch of other stuff. I think it's valuable. So here's the thing. I think you should read Play Bigger because it'll help you with two core things. Better define the problem and therefore how to fall in love with the problem. And that's going to help you set up the category. So when somebody says, oh, you're like an EDR, and you can say, no, what we're going to do is help you visualize your data so you can take better action on it. That's going to help you, right? Whatever it is. Oh, that's much more compelling. I would read that first. Brain Audit is definitely second. And in fact, I'm spending a lot of time with Brain Audit right now, and I'm loving every minute. I'm at a point where it's really clicking. Brain Audit has 7 bags. In fact, you know what? I'm going to have to see. Maybe Sean will join us on the program one time. It is his approach is it's just good. It's just really good. And so what happens is you need to set up that problem, and you need to do it in a way that our brains naturally respond to it. And then so he's got 7 bags. First 3 set up the problem. Next 3, you're taking away that risk. And you're doing it in a way that helps us process all type of stuff. Definitely book number 2. Mm-hmm. Book number 3 actually then would be Never Split the Difference. Mm-hmm. And that's talking about how we negotiate. And what you'll see is those 3 books are really well connected together. And in fact, to be fair, part of my practice of Straight Talk is showing people how those things connect together. Crossing the chasm, depending on how people say it, that's really looking at early adopters, software development. Well, at least at the time it was software development, it's new products. And you're looking at that, how do I get from early adopters to it gets into the mainstream? I think that's more of a niche-specific book. Jeffrey would not agree. He would tell me, no, everyone should read it. And he's built a really big business on that. That's looking at how you sustain and how you get over. I think in all fairness, in security, and I'll tell you what, I haven't read it in a decade, maybe 15 years. Like it's been a long time. Gosh, I'm going back in the memory banks. Maybe closer to 17 years. It's a good book. To look at this then with this pre-selling, the way I look at it is, frankly, you're pre-selling enough to survive. You're pre-selling enough to get to that first point, and you're working with those early adopters then who are going to help you. So that's where the crossing that chasm would come in. These are the early adopters. You need to go find the people who have that problem that you want. So whether you define it through any of the books we mentioned or just you have a knack for it, you've got a solution. But the thing to keep in mind, and I see this mistake over and over and over again. In fact, if we've got time today, we'll pull out some of these websites in our next part in these updates. Paul, I look at them and I go, I don't get what they do. They've got some nifty tagline with words that could mean 10 things each.
Yep. Ugh. I see that a lot.
You do that, you're not going to pre-sell. So what we're saying here is if you feel like you don't have funding. You don't want to go get funding. You're struggling to bootstrap. You're trying to figure out how to do it. The answer is spend some time when you can. And if you're already in a situation where there's no money coming in, then this is going to be an obsessive action for you. Go figure out what you do. Go figure out the problem really well. Go explain to people what the consequences of that problem are, and then offer them your solution and say, I can have this. Give them a realistic timeline. Don't get too optimistic. And then say, look, when you prepay, I'm going to give you X, Y, and Z. And you're pre-selling what you're going to bring them. It's a more common tactic than you realize. And not everybody's going to say yes, but the thing you'll start to realize is you don't need a lot. And then, by the way, once you've got 3 customers or 4 or 5 or 10, and you've delivered that first iteration and they're happy, then you can get their testimonials. Now you've taken away some risk from the next person and you've got some momentum. So guess what?
Yeah.
You can go get 3, 4, 5, 10 more.
Right.
And then you can kind of keep building. And then, by the way, at that point, if you need funding, P.S., you're less of a risk. One of the things we talked about with the VC and other stuff is what do they look for? They're looking for somebody who's less of a risk. Well, how do I show you they're less of a risk? Because somebody has actually given you the money. We've seen this on Shark Tank all the time. They'll say, well, okay, what do your sales look like? Well, we haven't really sold anything yet. Or they'll say, you have PO? Yeah. Have you had reorders? I have. Same store? I have. Oh, okay, that's interesting then.
Right.
Why? Because it shows that you've got that track record of success. So I wanted to give people that this is an option. Like we always seem to think it's I've got to get a grant, I've got to get funding, I've got to save and save and save, I've got to hit the ground running with multiple clients. I'm not suggesting you make a clean break and have no plan. All I'm saying is there's this other option, which is think through your stuff really well and pre-sell it, and then deliver, crush it, get it right. And I think things go really well for you there.
Awesome. What else we got?
All right. Well, so on this idea of hustle hard, hustle fast, so startup founders need to take a sabbatical. This is something that's been on my mind a lot lately. I think you and I have talked about this a lot, Paul, too. I am chronic at. I've looked at a lot of stuff this summer. I have been chronic at not taking enough time off, and I'll tell you something interesting. Starting this summer, I started not working weekends. Like not saying I wasn't working weekends, but then stealing away. It was, I don't work weekends. And then when the school year started, I pretty much wrap up my day now by 4:30, 5 o'clock. Now I start a whole lot earlier. I've actually started my mornings now at like 4:45, 5 in the morning. It's great. It's quiet. I get a lot of stuff done. Here's what I'm finding. Wow, I'm getting a ton of stuff done. And I actually just looked at our calendar and I said, okay, I can push hard for 2 weeks, and I've got a keynote coming up. Then I got 2 weeks, and I got a workshop in Dallas, Texas. So I'm actually looking to do a second workshop in Dallas. If you're in Dallas, reach out to me. And then 2 weeks after that, actually, I'll be in Boston. So I'm going to look to do a second workshop in Boston that first week in November. Then I'll be in the studio with you, I hope. And then, you know what? I got one more 2 week push after that. And then I'm actually going to try to take like a couple of days off at Thanksgiving and like unplug, like really like truly not unplug, do anything. Yeah. And just get 2 or 3 days. And so I put this up to talk about the sabbatical, because depending on where you're listening to is different parts of the world prize their vacation in different ways. A lot of times when you're in a startup grind, it takes over. It takes over your mornings. It takes over your nights. It takes over your sleeping habits. It takes over your gym habit. It takes over your eating habits. It takes over your weekends. And I love this idea of a sabbatical. And so what they say is, hey, look, if you've got a team, get people prepared, get it in place, let people know that you're doing it, make sure you've got a financial plan, make sure you've delegated properly, and then go. Now, I don't know about you, and I don't know the last time I have had a chance every now and then to take like 10. Like I actually last Christmas took 10 or 12 days off. I found it took me 3 full days before my body started to wind down. And then I started laughing again, and I dug it, and I enjoyed it. So the way I'm looking at it for me is I'm not sure with 4 kids in the business and everything else we got going on that a sabbatical makes a lot of sense. But what I do think and what I am looking at is for our ability to take a long weekend, maybe monthly, and a week off where we can. And I know that it's going to take me the first couple of days to kind of let the batteries spin down a little bit. Right. What's your experience around this been, and how do you feel after you get a little time away and a break?
No, I think it's good, and I think it's less. Sometimes for me, and I'm sure many find this, and yourself included, is that you're kind of somewhat more, when you own your own business especially, you're more stressed out about taking time off than you are about actually working. But I mentioned I sucked at project management, but getting ahead of when you're going to take time off and planning it has been much better, and we've actually had a huge push to do that here, especially with the show schedule. And this year, of course, we've added a lot of new shows and a lot of, programming changes throughout the year. And now that we've got a good rhythm, now I feel like I'm in a place where we can plan some time off and do some things. So we're in a much better place. Funny you mentioned that. I actually spent some time with my own schedule, looking out a year ahead, even in planning time off. With the shows, we have to do that, right? Because I can't just you can't just wake up one day when you're a podcast host and go, you know what, I'm going to take today off. Because you've got a guest that maybe the team worked on for 3 weeks or a month to get on the show. So,
no, that's exactly right, and that's one of the things I like about it. Let's be fair for a second too, and give some credit to the crew. You've built a great team, Paul. The Security Weekly crew is fantastic, and the hosts and the co-hosts that get to step in. This is a real pleasure, and that makes it a lot easier. It makes it easier for you to step away. It makes it easier for me as a co-host when you do have to be away, or the couple times I have to be away. And so, the whole crew, I think, really deserves respect from the people watching it, because a lot of times they'll see us and they're like, oh, they're a podcast. They do it themselves.
No,
it's full-blown production.
There's a whole team of people.
Put a lot into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, and that makes a lot of sense. And so, no, it's good. I think having some time off makes sense. And things that I've found, and then we'll transition off of this, is for me right now, what I look at is taking time around Thanksgiving in the U.S. makes sense. Taking time around Christmas and New Year's makes sense. Taking time around 4th of July here in the U.S. also makes sense. So there's a couple times a year where I can probably go steal a week to 10 days to 2 weeks and not really miss a lot. Number one. Number two, I've seen two people say stuff where either, well, if you're taking a break, then you have to take a complete break. And other people are like, that's nuts. I'm in between. Like I said, I think you got to have a 3-day limit. You really need time to drain.
You do.
If you're the kind of person who, when you're taking a break, you're like, okay, I'm going to take a break. But first, I'm just going to check email. And 8 hours later, you're like, okay, I'm ready for my break. No, that's not a break. But if you are running a business and you've got a key client calling you, don't be a moron. And say, well, I mean, but I'm taking a break, Charlie. I can't quite. No, call them back.
Right.
They're a good client. Don't be stupid. So, all right, this article, I like this a lot. There's a couple. So, a B2B buying is strategic, selling is tactical. All right, so keep this in mind. And this is, again, why I think that this show appeals to a lot of different people. If you're in startup mode, you really need to think about this. But by the way, if you're in the enterprise, think about this too. Buying is strategic, selling is tactical. I've seen a bunch of different stuff where. So there's a couple of things when you think about selling something. And this is why we on this program harp so much on what's the problem you're trying to solve. If you're trying to sell me a solution to a problem I don't have, then I'm not a buyer. I'm just not going to buy. The other thing I think is interesting is we're getting to a point in our sales, and I'm hearing this number repeated enough to know it's probably still made up, but close enough to be true. Some 80 to 90% of the buying process is already done by the time they call you. So what that means is people, when they're aware that they have a problem, they begin to look for solutions to that problem. That's the strategy part of it for them. There's a strategic, especially in the larger enterprises, there's very few people who make a decision by themselves. It's not always by committee, but they've got to work through a budgeting or a funding process. They've got to work through a procurement process. There's a certain amount of diligence they've got to do. And, by the way, they're still working crazy full-time jobs and trying to fit this into it. So what's kind of interesting then is that if you think about it from a sales perspective, you're trying to get it figured out, and you're like, but I've got this solution to this problem, and you have this problem. And the person on the other end says, yeah, okay. But if the problem doesn't hurt, right, and this, I always hate this because we talk about the pain, but here's the reality. You have to have so much discomfort in your current situation that you will bear more discomfort to change than to just keep things as they are. And so what we'll see a lot of times, if we're candid about it, people will bitch about their situation. But if you're the person who comes along and says, well, would you like a solution? Nah, I'm good. I'm just going to bitch a little longer. Right. Because that change, that's more energy, that's more effort. And so what happens, what you have to keep in mind then when you're selling to somebody is you're a solution and you're looking for somebody who's got that problem. And when somebody has a problem, they're trying to find that solution. And so what happens then a lot of times is that if you're in a very tactical sales mode, you're going to come across people who aren't buyers. There's this great concept in the marketing and sales thing called return to nurture, RTN. You connect with somebody, Paul, how are you? It's great to talk to you. And as long as you've built a relationship of trust, if Paul and I can have a real conversation about a situation, I can understand what's up and if he's a legitimate buyer or not. So, for example, if you talk to me about this sometime and I'll say, okay, well, who's your target profile? Who's your ideal? And how will you know if they're a buyer? How will you know if they're ready? If you're like, I don't know, like, do they have money? Do they like me or not? Nah, you're not there. They have to have a certain pain, have to have a certain awareness about the pain. And then more importantly, right, so if you take a look at it, right, so somebody is a prospect if you think they're likely to have a pain. They're an opportunity when they're aware of the pain and prepared to do something about it. So what happens then, and what this is saying in this article that I really like is you don't make the sale until the buyer makes the buying decision. But a lot of times the person you're coming into touch with isn't a buyer. They may not be the buyer. They may not be a buyer. And so the broader part to this is either A, how are you helping them navigate that? Or B, what else do you have on your website? My attitude to this is, what else are you putting out there, right? It's I saw, in fact, I think it was Sean D'Souza, the guy who did the brain audit. He and others, it's not new, but they call it the bikini principle, right? You give away 80%. You reveal a lot of what you've got and let people who are already going to search for that problem start to figure it out. So when Paul and I, right, we're both bald, when we lose our hair over security startups not explaining the problem they solve, not telling us who they work with, not helping us understand the consequences, that's why. Because if I'm trying to solve a problem, I don't care that you're the top-rated technology to solve something that I've never heard of in some way that I've never understood it. What I want to understand is the problem, and what's your take on the problem? What's your point of view of the problem? And that's where the stuff in Play Bigger really comes into it. So it's anyway. I thought it was interesting to help people understand.
We should do our sales calls wearing bikinis. Is that?
Yeah, you a mankini. Definitely. I think if you guys did video calls with a mankini, you're gonna just watch sales take off.
Killing it.
Yeah, it's not even gonna be fair. Like, that's not playing fair. So.
Well, I think rip and replace costs for endpoint products certainly factors into this article in a huge way, Michael. Right? Because there's a big. You may have a pain point with your endpoint product today. There's a huge cost to rip and replace that, and when you come out of it on the other side, not only do you want to solve those problems that you had before, but you want some other benefits as well to make up for that pain you went through and cost you went through to rip and replace. So not only do you have to do it better, you got to do more better, I think, to make a lot of those sales when you're in that situation.
That's why when we talk about value prop, we talk about using straight talk to build out your value prop, right? First question is, what problem are you trying to solve? Second answer you need to have is, what value do you create when you solve that problem? But you just hit on that third part. What's the impact to your solution? Right? And if you just look at it very clinically, very simply, your impact can be negative, positive, or neutral. If you're neutral, you might have enough value that I'm good with it. If you're negative, it means you're eroding value. You're going to create more problems from any other side. I can't do it. It's amazing to me how many people don't ask the impact question. They go, you solved the problem. I like you. You took me out for lobster. That's awesome. So let's slam it in. And you go a year later and you go, how'd it work out? Oh my goodness, it was horrible. Everything's falling apart. It's a mess. Nobody likes me. Wow. Okay. So it's the impact question. No, you're absolutely right. And if you can think those things through and realize that the person that you'd like to sell to might have that problem, might not understand the value, might not understand the impact, either you have to learn how to coach them through that process, or you have to put enough information out there that people can learn it on their own so that when they're ready, they trust you and they're ready to come have that conversation with you. So that dovetails into this next one, which is the small business owners are, I hate titles like this, almost always fail with their marketing because of these three. Yeah, okay, whatever. That said, for whatever reason, I was like, all right, let me see if I like it or not. Tell you what. So here's the first thing. You don't have a systematic process in place to get new business. Second mistake is that you get new customers, but then you ignore them. And the third mistake is you treat marketing as afterthought. And I went, well, gosh. Well, we covered a lot of the security vendors pretty fast. And I know that hurts. I'm sorry. Go have a good cry over it. Look, the reality is a lot of people, they don't systematically, what is it that you're doing? And I'll tell you, the thing that matters most here, right? 2 guiding principles. Offer value, be consistent. That's it. If you're going to write stuff, write stuff. If you're going to call people, call people. If you're going to podcast. Obviously, I think I'd be remiss, Paul, in saying people who want to make a difference should probably reach out to us. We've got some great opportunities for 2018.
Absolutely.
And they can be part of this family, and we're going to help them build those relationships and expand those connections. But you got to have a process. And you and I, when we talk to people about working with us on the program here, we ask them, what does your process look like today? How are you getting business? If we got people to your doorstep, what are you going to do with them? What's that look like? Astonishingly, a large number of people don't know how to answer that question. But then, a lot of times too, like they got the new customers and they ignore them. Well, how did you onboard them? How are they doing? How did you talk to them? What are you learning from them? Are you thanking them for the business? Or all along you're like, and this one kills me with the marketing. We'll get there, but we got a great product. We got to have a great product first. I would argue you have to have great marketing, and then your product can take shape. But that's just me. By the way, have you seen the show? And it's related to this, kind of, mostly just the marketing. Have you watched the show Diesel Brothers?
Mm-mm. I heard of it.
I stumbled across it. It's two guys in Utah. They call themselves brothers. They've been good friends for a long time. And they build out diesel trucks, but what they found was there wasn't a really good marketplace for everything diesel parts, and so they created a website, dieselsellers.com. Here's why I think it's important. Geniuses at marketing. Absolute geniuses at marketing. They build really cool diesel trucks, then they give them away. To get into the giveaway, you got to go to their website. You got to click around. You got to do things. You got to get registered for it. They give them away. Their build quality is high. The stuff that they sell is reputable. People dig it, and boom, they're drawing a lot of people to it. If you go look at the stuff they did early versus the stuff they do now, they had the marketing down solid. They produce funny YouTube videos. They're smart, whip smart. They teach a lot. They seem like they give back to the community a lot. They make a huge difference. For them, marketing wasn't an afterthought; it's the forethought. Mm-hmm. And I think in security we could do that. We treat marketing as like marketing, sales. Folks, that's what gets you out there. That's what
right.
brings people in. So anyway, I thought that was interesting because every now and then we trade off shows, and I found I'm drawn to that show, but I'm the guy who sits there and says, well, first of all, I like trucks, so that's a no-brainer for me. But then I'm reading it or watching it.
You do live in the South, so.
Oh, yeah. No, I fit the profile.
With it? Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that's funny is like I'm in the South and we have a lot of jacked up trucks down here, and they're like we'll start with a 6-inch lift, and I'm like, I'm a 3-inch lift kind of guy. Like that works for me. And I'll tell you later the pickup truck I think I'm gonna get next year. But so anyway, I'm the guy looking at it going, but do you see how they marketed that? That's brilliant.
Right.
Did you see how they did their branding there? That's brilliant. Did you see how they brought people in and they did that? Yeah. If you're doing that in security today, tell me about it. Or if you know somebody, if you see a company doing really smart stuff like that in security today, then tip us off because I'd love to celebrate that. I'd love to talk about the things that people are doing. All right, last piece here. This was really interesting to me. So you can stick with me here for a second, Paul, because I'm gonna do a bit of a stretch on it, and then Karsten Speckman actually sent me a note this morning related to the TaskRabbit acquisition by IKEA, and said, hey, how would that work in the security space? And I said, funny timing. I'm going to talk about this today. So one of the things we're finding is that there's a whole heat up in the labor market right now, the VCs, what they call labor market or a job market matchmaker. So what we're finding is I've been pretty outspoken that I don't think we have a real big shortage in terms of security talent. At least not from an economics perspective. And I know somebody right now is pissed and you're throwing something at the screen or you're swearing under your breath or maybe quite loudly that I just don't understand because you have a problem. No, I get it. I'm not saying that solving this challenge or at least your actual hiring challenge is a problem. I'm just saying systematically we don't have a challenge. That said, it seems like everybody in tech today and everybody from truck driving to hairstylist to everything else, there's a shortage. Everybody has a shortage. I think it's a marketplace inefficiency. I think there's inefficiencies in how we screen, how we connect, how we interview, how we onboard, how we train, how we develop, all that type of stuff. And turns out the VC seems to think the same way. And so what's happening is total new ways on focusing on how we hire, how we get people to do freelance stuff and how we get them into their gigs, how we get people to validate the things that they do. And so as I looked at this, I kind of said, well, that's interesting to me. I'd love to see how this works from a security perspective. Because I think, and you and I, and certainly our guests on Security Weekly, as well as things you and I have described and discussed over the years, So because you got a cert, does that make you qualified? I don't know. What's the role? What's the position? Well, hold on. Do people know enough about security to know what questions to ask? How do they validate them? And I've often thought that it'd be interesting if there was a way. In fact, I'll tie it into this. So you're doing a lot of work now with Cyber Patriot. One of the things that I've encouraged people in security is if you think you're going to need to hire people, go get involved with your local community colleges, or what we call now technical colleges, and go get involved with Cyber Patriot, because then you've got the potential to work with some of these people for 4 to 6 years, face-to-face, hands-on. Mm-hmm. You want to know who to hire. You want to know who's going to make a difference on your team, especially at an entry level. Well, if you've mentored and worked with them for 4 to 6 years,
right,
then you know who to work with, and or you've now provided a valuable reference for them. Because if somebody says, well, I worked with Paul Asadorian for the last 4 years. Oh, Paul likes you? Well, let me call Paul and talk to him about you. That's a great way to get your foot in the door with these things. So I think here's my point. And then Carson's point was kind of like wow, TaskRabbit, imagine that for security. So when you go look at it on the IKEA acquisition, right? IKEA, a huge company. TaskRabbit 2015 was valued at roughly $50 million. They put themselves on the market earlier part of this year and said, like, we need to grow. The only way we're going to grow is someone bigger than us acquires us, brings us to something else. Here's what I thought was interesting. IKEA has right now some services. We'll come to your house, we'll assemble the stuff for you. But what they started realizing was that there were people on TaskRabbit doing it cheaper and doing it better, and it's part of that gig economy, and so I think there's going to be some growth in there for IKEA. But what's also interesting is, again, take that same concept. Imagine you buy a new security product, and you can go out to a site where somebody's going to come and help you with it, right, on the gig basis, but they're rated, they're reviewed, you understand who they are. Oh, could that then influence hiring? Could that do stuff differently? So I just wanted to put out there, because we look at this type of stuff, and I know in the enterprise we got a lot of challenges around this. Whether you like my perception of it or not doesn't matter. But what matters is if you're struggling with it, would you like to see a startup handling this? Do we think startups can handle this better? And what are some of the models out there that might take a look at it? So that's kind of why I threw this out there. But I mean, what's your take? Do you think, Paul, that we could put together some sort of a technology solution to better assess and match make qualified candidates in the security space?
Yeah, and I think there's companies that are out there doing that today as well.
Should we get them on the program and talk to them?
Absolutely.
All right. Done. Consider it done.
Startup news.
Yeah. So it's one of these weird weeks. Like last week, Matt and I we had 11 to go through, and only because we caught one the week before. This week's not as busy, but you're going to see a trend line in it here really fast. And there's a couple things I just wanted to throw in here I thought was interesting. First of which, we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. You and I always point these out. There's always some article. This is the worst year ever for VC. This is going to be the best year for VC.
Yeah,
security starts are down. Security starts are up.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the latest global IPO market on pace. Best year since 2007. Best in a decade. Oh. That's funny because I'm pretty sure just a couple months ago, everybody's telling us doom and gloom. We don't even know if we're going to recover. Here's why. Stop. We're still going to cover these things, and I'm still going to go read them to see why and what the underlying economics of it are. Here's the bottom line. Everybody's going to have an opinion. Everybody's going to go read the stuff. If you're passionate, take what Barrett said before. You're passionate. You've got an idea. You think you can make a difference. Get after it. Go make the difference. Do it. Don't be worried about IPOs, not IPOs, money, not money, everything else. I don't think it matters.
And we see this trend where identity management providing companies are just getting swallowed up. I think that was a trend. If we could point at a trend this year, I think that the number of acquisitions of larger companies of other companies that provide this type of identity management service in multiple different lights. Some is more of a developer aspect, some's more of an end user, some is B2B. The point being that identity management companies are getting swallowed up left and right.
Yeah, and keep in mind then too, because identity management is one of these things that it's been around, it's been hard for a long time, and unless you've really gotten in the weeds in it, so there's an identity proofing, right? There's a verification perspective, there's an authentication component to it, then there's a management of all the different pieces to it, and as we've gone more and more cloud, a lot of people, I kind of feel like, and I know I'm going to make a couple people shudder, but, if you go back to the late 90s and we look at PKI and the supposed interoperability of the certs that never worked out the way we thought it was going to, it was like, wait, so you mean a consumer is going to have how many certs? Meanwhile, we've got how many? I haven't looked at my 1Password recently, but I've got a couple hundred passwords in there at least. Yeah. So what happens is this, identity is it's hot. It's hot right now because firms are trying to figure out how to ease the onboarding process. So like if you take a look at SAP acquiring Gigya, not even remotely a surprise. Now, here's what I did think was kind of interesting, though, right? So they're using social login, they're doing identity and access management, they're looking at registration. So Gigya is really looking at the whole process. If you go back, you take a look at them. They got started in 2006. They'd taken over $100 million in funding, but their last big round was 2014. That's kind of interesting. So they were kind of at that point where they've either got to do another raise or it's right time to get acquired. $350 million. I mean, first of all, they reported on it. It's not a small sum. $100 million in funding. It's not the kind of multiple we've tended to see from other stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you could think about Vericode's acquisition of was 630, 618, somewhere. It's over 600 million.
Yep.
So it's a big difference to it. That said, this is respectable. Well, I think it's respectable. I don't think anybody got really beat.
Yeah.
And SAP doesn't make it. I mean, no surprise there. SAP
they need
to
that
maintain their
technology.
competitiveness. This is a big deal for them. Google acquired Bidiam.
Yeah. Does Google need Bidiam? We debated this on Enterprise Security Weekly. Like, does Google really need this technology? Doesn't Google already have this single sign-on and identity and access management, or are they just looking to add features more quickly by making an acquisition?
Yeah, I tried looking at the website, the Bidiam website, to see if I could see something. What I thought was interesting was this: it's an undisclosed acquisition. To me, it feels like what we call acqui-hire. Like they've raised $15 million over 4 rounds. Maybe they've got something interesting. Maybe they've got some little trick Google hasn't figured out. But when it's undisclosed, I feel like that's essentially a down round. I feel like that. Sometimes there's a reason to do an undisclosed. I don't have inside knowledge. I didn't go. Couldn't find anybody to talk to about this. But I think it's a good point because when you think about the number of people using Google for their authentication and the Google Authenticator, which is essentially
right.
I think one of the go-tos on the internet today.
Yep.
You go, why would they need that? And my guess is there's some component in here that they wanted, and it was cheaper to just go buy it than to develop it themselves.
Yep.
On FIDO, interesting. Now the way that this got reported largely was, look at this, Microsoft Ventures is behind it, and a few others, and wow, this is a big deal. I was like, cool, I've never heard of them. Let me go check it out. Oh, this is their Series C. Oh, that's interesting. And the reason that's interesting to me is it's a growth round. So, it got reported as like some big, now, are they a startup? Absolutely. But like some big deal. And it was like, by the way, $30 million for a Series C is not bad. But here's what they do. Background checking and identity verification solutions for businesses. So what's interesting, too, is that it's kind of like these aren't necessarily B2B plays. Some of these are B2C plays, even though they're really more like B2B2C plays. So it's the business providing services to other businesses that are trying to onboard or woo customers or make things easier for them.
Right.
So it's a good, I always like Alderman's take on this stuff because I think Matt pays a lot of attention to this. They've taken on $60 million since 2013, but they have an equity round. They have an unattributed round. The equity round's interesting because that probably meant that they didn't have enough cash. They didn't do a smart raise. So looking at their history, looking at the fact that they did a $30 million raise now, I'll be curious to see if they got it right. They have some big names behind it, and I'm still curious. When you see Microsoft Ventures in something right now, that to me says, oh, I wonder if Microsoft's gonna pull that up. I wonder, and I don't know if you've seen it, but on a leadership front, in fact, if any of these are good, I'll throw them into next week's lineup. The new CEO, not so new anymore, of Microsoft, getting a lot of praise for using empathy and for finding the soul of Microsoft and using compassion and navigating the PC juggernaut into the online world, and is getting a lot of high marks for it. Well, we're also now seeing they started up this pretty big venture, and they're doing a lot of investment in security, and they're doing a lot of investment in identity. I think that tells you where I think we can see them heading.
Right.
Vimeo. All right. Now, I am curious. I'm curious your take on this. In fact, I have a couple ideas, and I'm kind of curious your take on all of them, because obviously you understand live streaming, Paul, and you understand video. So Vimeo acquired Livestream. Now, here's what's interesting. I tried to find it, and I looked across a couple sources. I can't find any record of Vimeo taking on any funding at all, which I think is
I don't understand. Yeah, I don't understand their model. I don't understand how they play in that category up against Google and with YouTube. I do know that the live streaming.
I'm going to tell you.
I was just going to say.
I can tell you that part. Yeah, go ahead. No.
Well, I was just saying the live streaming market has really undergone a lot of consolidation over the years. There used to be a lot more choices, largely IBM consolidated that market when they bought Ustream. Google and Facebook changed the market when they introduced their live streaming services, so much so that I think the standard today is to stream your videos over Facebook and YouTube and post your videos to Facebook and YouTube, which leaves these other players to either get acquired or acquire each other. It's interesting.
So that's the funny.
It could have gone. I don't know if it could have gone the other way. I don't understand how big of a company Vimeo is, but I would have thought it almost could have gone the other way, and Livestream could have got Vimeo. But I think Livestream got behind in the market against the big players like Facebook and Google.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to figure out, because what I find fascinating about Livestream is I first came across them 4 or 5 years ago, and they were live streaming large corporate events. But what I've seen from them in the last 2 or 3 years is they have some dedicated hardware. They've got some dedicated software, and they're the ones that said, "Oh, you want to be able to live stream to both of these at the same time? Cool. We're going to show you how to do it." And they've done a lot on that front. The Vimeo stuff's more interesting to me. So you start out by saying Vimeo versus YouTube versus whatever. This is an area that I've actually looked at. So for some of the stuff that I've done, especially if you're trying to do training videos, and if I want to control access to it, or I want to control all sorts of other stuff, there's a lot of controls you do have in YouTube, and there's a lot you don't have in YouTube. So what people typically say when they look at Vimeo versus YouTube, and in fact, they did that search again today to see if there's anything new out there. What they'll say is, look, YouTube is free or like $10 a month, depending on how you set it up, or whether it's part of your G Suite account or what have you. And you get a lot of control, and it's multi-billion people audience that you can reach to, and Google gives it preference in its search results and all sorts of other really cool things for it. But by the way, if you change out the video, you lose the stats. There's some stuff you can do with the video, but if you wholesale change the video, you lose the stats. There's some other things you don't have complete control or granularity over.
Yeah, and YouTube doesn't give you a lot of control. I agree. Vimeo does give you a little more control. Also, I think content-wise, Vimeo is not as restrictive as to what you can post. I mean, if you sneeze the wrong way and it sounds like some copyrighted material, YouTube will send you a notification. They will also, as has happened to us in the past, pull your channel and or your video and not give you much explanation, so much so that I have to reach inside the organization through contacts to get our channel back. Now, to Google's credit, that hasn't happened in some time. I don't know if we ended up in some kind of whitelist or whatnot, or what their scoring engine looks like today. But being such a large ecosystem, you start to run into those problems of losing control and not having any flexibility in whether or not they're going to pull your channel down, as the paid options with Google really aren't that great. Whereas you can pay Vimeo, and that's actually why I liked some of these services before. Remember Blip.tv? You could pay them, and they're not going to take down a paying customer because you're paying them. Exactly right. They can build a staff that will reach out and say, hey, we noticed this video. Whereas Google's just like, yeah, you know what? It's a commodity, and we have the right to rip down your channel, and we don't have to give you an explanation. So that's one of the frustrating things. But all those smaller players have largely gone away.
Yeah, well, and I think it's interesting. So here's my current thought then too, as I'll get some of this was, my Vimeo subscription is about to get renewed, and I was actually auditing whether it made sense or not, and I haven't made a complete decision on that. But now that they acquired Livestream, it's going to be interesting to me to see how it starts to work. I also see LinkedIn is getting into the game. They just sent me a notification that I can start doing some video with them, and frankly, I'm going to try it out. So I'll report back on how that works. But that said, I think then what might start being interesting is if you give me control over my video and you give me the ability to do the live stream and put it out on my own site, as well as, by the way, you can watch it on Facebook or you can watch it on YouTube, but also on my own site. And then I've got an archive of it all there. That to me could be a sweet spot. So I'm going to wait and see, because Vimeo's announced they're going to do live streaming now. So it'll be interesting. And the last one for the week, because I know we're about out of time. CA Technologies acquired RunScope. So this just came up because it was CA, not so much because it was RunScope. Because RunScope, they're doing API testing, real-time traffic monitoring, logging, debugging solutions for app developers. But that fits in with the Veracode acquisition, right? So it shows us, to me, that CA Technologies is investing in their ability to help the app security side of things. But maybe there's a different way to take a look at it. Awesome.
Do we talk about our journeys enough? Because we're kind of short on time, but
I think we did. I mean, if I might just real quick again. So we've launched the coaching. I've got a limited number of spots. I'll have some more details on that coming up. But those of you that are interested, I've enjoyed the conversations, and I'm happy to find a spot for you. And I've got the new workshop going right now. So I've got end of October. I'm going to be in Dallas. I got one extra slot. So if you're interested and you want to do a private workshop with me in Dallas, the last week of October, reach out to me. I would love to figure it out, and I can make it exciting for you and good for me. And then first full week of November, so November 6th, 7th, I've already got a private engagement in Boston. But then later that week, I've got one more slot, and I'd be happy to do a workshop. Second workshop that week. In fact, that's ideal. And then it'll get me in the studio. In fact, maybe I'll even be able to be in studio for Security Weekly, and then for our program as well. So
that'd be awesome.
I'll try to make a full week out of it. So yeah, so good things are happening. It's like you get more focused, and I love the way it's all coming together. And the writing is coming. It's good. Everything is good.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching this episode of Startup Security Weekly. See everyone next time.